When I first moved into Springdale Heights, I thought I had found the perfect neighborhood. It was the kind of place where people waved as they passed by, when neighbors exchanged homemade pies during the holidays, and where the HOA functioned as a helpful organization rather than a dictatorship. The rules were straightforward. Keep your lawn neat, don't leave trash cans out too long, and avoid loud parties late at night. That was it. I had lived there for almost 5 years without a single issue until Alex Carter arrived. Alex moved in, portraying himself as a friendly, community-oriented person, but anyone who had lived in the neighborhood long enough could sense the fakeness behind his polished smile. He was the type who grinned at you while scanning your yard for something to complain about. Within 2 months, he pushed his way onto the HOA board, and by 6 months, he had maneuvered himself into the position of president. Most of us were oblivious to what was happening until it was too late. Meetings that used to be quick and casual turned into hour-long lectures about community standards. Suddenly, notices started appearing on doors. Fines for flower pots being an inch too close to the walkway, for American flags slightly larger than what he deemed acceptable, for having garden gnomes that weren't aesthetically aligned with the neighborhood's look. It was ridiculous. Alex had turned our peaceful place into a personal kingdom, ruling with an iron fist. His obsession with perfection knew no bounds. He hired private security patrols. Yes, you heard that right. Security guards who drove around inspecting homes, looking for violations. It was as if we were living in some dystopian suburb where even the smallest infractions could lead to financial ruin. He tripled the fines, and no one was spared. One of my elderly neighbors, Mrs. Peterson, received a $500 fine because her front door color had faded. The poor woman lived on a fixed income and had no way to pay that. Then there were the Simmons family, who had their child's basketball hoop removed because it wasn't architecturally approved. Alex even issued fines for cars parked in driveways overnight, claiming they disrupted the uniform look of the neighborhood. It was clear Alex was enjoying the fear he instilled in homeowners. What made it worse was how strategic he was in his targets. He went after specific homeowners, mostly those whom he thought were easy to push around. Elderly folks, single parents, anyone who didn't have the time or energy to fight back. But I wasn't one of them, and Alex had no idea who he was dealing with. My fight began when I received a notice taped to my front door. Violation. Your driveway has developed a slight discoloration and must be fully resurfaced within 2 weeks, or face a fine of $1,000. I laughed at first. Surely this was a mistake. Concrete naturally changes color over time. Every driveway in the neighborhood had minor imperfections. But when I brought it up to Alex at the next meeting, he didn't even pretend to be reasonable. I run a high-standard community, he sneered, his chin jutting in the air. We cannot allow deteriorating properties to bring down our home values. Deteriorating? I shot back, holding up a picture of my driveway. It's barely noticeable. You're telling me I need to spend thousands to fix a minor color difference. A chilling smile spread across his face. Rules are rules, he retorted, tapping his clipboard as if it granted him the power of God. I wasn't about to roll over and let him bully me. I appealed the violation, but my request was denied. Alex had maneuvered himself into controlling architectural compliance, meaning he had total discretion over what was approved or denied. My only recourse was legal action, but that would be costly. The worst part, I wasn't the only one he targeted. One evening, while venting my frustrations to my next-door neighbor Tom, he dropped a bombshell. You know he's trying to force people out, right? What do you mean? I frowned. He's working with some real estate guy, the developer Mark Riggs, the one buying up properties across town. Alex has his eyes set on our neighborhood. He's been pushing people into foreclosure by racking up fines. Once they are overwhelmed, they sell for cheap. I clenched my fists in anger. This wasn't just about ridiculous HOA rules. It was a deliberate scheme. Alex wasn't just a power-hungry tyrant. He was using his authority to profit at our expense. I refused to become one of his victims. As if on cue, one morning, I awakened to the rumble of machinery outside my house. I thought it was construction somewhere nearby until a grinding noise sent panic rushing through me. I bolted to the window. There, in my driveway, was a jackhammer slamming into the pavement. I rushed outside, barefoot, heart racing. A crew of workers in fluorescent vests were demolishing my driveway, while Alex stood smugly at the edge of my lawn, clipboard in hand. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled, barely holding back my fury. Without a shred of remorse, Alex looked at me as if I were the crazy one. "Since you refuse to comply, we're handling it for you. At your expense, of course." He had the audacity to smirk. Feeling shaky with anger, I pulled out my phone to start recording. "You're illegally destroying my property. This is criminal destruction." But just then, a loud bang echoed, and I felt the ground tremble. The workers stopped, eyes widening in horror as a hissing sound filled the air. The unmistakable smell of natural gas, strong and noxious, flooded the street. "Oh no," I muttered. In a flash, the situation spiraled into chaos. The moment the jackhammer struck the gas line, everything shifted from a petty dispute to a full-blown emergency. A gut-wrenching bang reverberated through Springdale Heights, followed by a hissing noise that chilled my spine. Panic erupted as I watched the workers stumble back, dropping their equipment. One of them grabbed his radio, voice shaking as he reported the disaster. Car alarms blared nearby, their senses triggered by the underground disturbance. And Alex, who had been smirking just moments ago, now stood frozen, his clipboard clutched tightly in his hand, as if it could shield him from the trouble he had caused. Without thinking, I bolted toward my neighbors' houses, pounding on doors and shouting for them to evacuate immediately. The elderly couple next door, the Petersons, stepped out, confused, clutching their robes. "Gas leak!" I yelled at them, frantic. My neighbor Tom was already on his phone, calling 911, while his wife grabbed their kids and fled toward the main road. More neighbors rushed outside as the panic spread like wildfire, and the horrifying reality of the gas leak began to sink in. Then I spotted Ted, a retired firefighter, sprinting toward the street. His training kicked in, and he began organizing a safe evacuation zone. "Everyone, at least 200 feet back. Move now," he demanded, and I finally felt some relief knowing someone who actually knew what they were doing was taking charge. Emergency vehicles arrived within minutes, their flashing lights reflecting ominously off the suburban homes. Gas company trucks, fire engines, and police cars flooded the street, sirens blaring and chaos reigning as firefighters began to assemble their gear. A police officer rushed toward me as I stood near my driveway, still recording. "You the homeowner?" he asked, glancing at the wreckage behind me. I nodded, phone in hand, adrenaline racing. "That man." I pointed at Alex, who now appeared pale, his self-satisfied demeanor evaporating. "He ordered this. No permits, no utility checks. He just started digging." The officer's expression darkened as he turned to the firefighters surrounding the broken gas line, using their equipment to scan for dangerous gas levels. That's when the evacuation order was officially issued. Everyone was to leave the area immediately, and the entire block was sealed off. As the neighborhood gathered in the local shopping center parking lot, anxiously watching the chaos unfold, I kept my eyes locked on Alex. He paced back and forth, visibly crumbling under the weight of what he had done. His designer's sunglasses were askew on his head, and the confidence that once radiated from him faded with every passing moment. Police officers swarmed the site, speaking to workers, first responders, and frantic homeowners. I stood beside Ted, arms crossed, as we watched a senior fire marshal communicate on his radio. Then, just as I anticipated, a police officer approached Alex, his expression unreadable. "Sir, we need to talk about the excavation work you ordered," he stated, pulling out a notepad. Alex blinked rapidly, shaking his head. No, you don't understand," he started, his voice high and shaky. "This was necessary to correct an ongoing HOA violation. That driveway was—" The officer cut him off. "I don't care about the HOA. What I care about is the fact that you conducted an authorized excavation, failed to call for utility marking, and caused a hazardous gas leak that could have led to an explosion." Alex's face drained of color. But I'm in charge of compliance," he stammered, clutching his clipboard tighter, as if it could save him. I have documentation. The officer shook his head, his voice growing stern. You are not within your rights to jackhammer into a public utility line. At this point, you're looking at multiple legal violations, including reckless endangerment and destruction of property. For the first time since Alex wormed his way into power, he had nothing to say. As hours passed, and first responders worked tirelessly to secure the area, more neighbors began to step forward with their stories of Alex's harassment. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman fined for her faded front door, approached one of the police officers, clutching a thick stack of printed emails and violation letters. He's been targeting specific homeowners, forcing them into unnecessary repairs so they'd sell their homes, she told him, her voice shaky but resolute. I overheard another couple share how Alex had been working with a shady developer, attempting to buy up homes at a discount by pushing families into financial distress through endless fines. When the county investigator arrived, the real trouble for Alex began. One by one, neighbors came forward, revealing patterns of corruption and abuse. And just like that, Alex's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. By nightfall, once the gas leak was fully contained, the HOA board called for an emergency meeting. But this time, it wasn't at Alex's request. It was a meeting to remove him from power. The community center, usually half empty for these gatherings, was overflowing with residents who wanted to address the injustice we had endured. I stood at the back of the room as Mr. Reynolds, the board president, stepped forward, looking exhausted but determined. In light of today's events, he began, his voice echoing through the tense crowd, the board has unanimously voted to remove Alex Carter from his position as HOA president. A thunderous wave of applause erupted in the room, people celebrating like they'd been freed from a dictator's rule. But it doesn't end there, Mr. Reynolds continued, raising a hand to quell the applause. We are also launching a full investigation into violations, fines, and property disputes Alex has overseen during his tenure. Anyone who has been unfairly fined or forced into unnecessary renovations, please submit your claims. We will be overhauling our entire HOA system to prevent this kind of abuse from occurring again. Just like that, Alex's iron grip on our community had been shattered. It was a wild roller coaster of a night, one that none of us would forget. It was a wild roller coaster of a night, one that none of us would forget. The community erupted into ecstatic cheers and applause as Mr. Reynolds continued to address us. It felt like a dam had burst, freeing the floodwaters of anger and frustration that had pooled in our hearts for so long. We were no longer just victims. We were a collective force. With the removal of Alex Carter, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The chatter turned from fear to hope, fearlessly discussing the changes we wanted to implement. I exchanged glances with Tom and Ted, who wore grins of disbelief. As the meeting drew to a close, the momentum felt palpable. This was our chance to reclaim our neighborhood from the grasp of tyranny. The air filled with plans to reverse Alex's draconian regulations. People passionately shared ideas, a community garden, a block party for all residents, and even proposals for volunteer crews to help maintain the elderly homeowners' properties. This was not just about dismantling his reign. It was about building something better in its place. As we trickled out of the community center, I spotted Mrs. Peterson, her eyes gleaming with tears of joy. I never thought I would see this day, she said, clutching her stack of papers as proof of a fight against Alex. Thank you for being brave. I shrugged off the praise, but inside, a sense of responsibility burgeoned. If victory against Alex was to mean something, we needed to ensure that it didn't become a fleeting moment of triumph. We had to safeguard this newfound community spirit. The following day, I awoke to a steady stream of messages from neighbors sharing their stories about Alex's harassment. They reached out in gratitude, thanking me for standing up, not just for myself, but for them too. It was both overwhelming and inspiring. I also found out that the police were conducting interviews about the gas leak incident, and Alex's worrying past was being scrutinized. As anger resurfaced at the thought of Alex's actions, I decided to organize a community meeting. I texted Tom and Ted, asking for their help. We need to rally everyone together. It's now or never, I wrote. Within hours, We had set a date for the meeting, just 3 days away. The energy buzzed through the neighborhood, with everyone eager to participate in the planning. We decided to hold it in the local park, a space that had been neglected for too long due to Alex's fines against anyone who wanted to beautify it. On the day of the meeting, the park overflowed with residents. Children played while adults gathered under the canopy of old oaks, all eager to take part in the collective healing of our community. I stood in front with Tom and Ted, feeling the weight of the moment. "Thank you all for being here," I started, my voice steady but charged with emotion. "We have gone through a dark chapter together, but it's time we take back this neighborhood and make it ours again. Today isn't just about removing Alex. It's about what we want our community to be from here on out." As I spoke, I saw nodding heads and glistening eyes among the crowd. Everyone was engaged, ready to contribute their ideas. What surprised me the most was Ted's bravery to come forward with his ideas. "We need to create an emergency preparedness plan," he said passionately. "Our community was tested recently, and we need to ensure that next time, we're ready. Let's organize training sessions and drills." The crowd erupted in agreement, and as I looked around, I felt a buzz of energy, a shared resolve. After half an hour of fierce brainstorming, we agreed to start grassroots projects, neighborhood watch groups, monthly gatherings for updates, and ways to raise funds for revitalizing shared spaces. Amidst the excitement, however, there was still an undercurrent of fear. Many neighbors spoke of Alex, how he might retaliate, or how there were still unanswered questions. A sense of caution crept in. "What if he tries to sabotage our efforts?" someone asked. "What if he's working on a way to come back?" Those words hung heavy in the air, but rather than scatter the hope we had ignited, they transformed it into more resolute determination. "Let him try," I declared, emboldened by the moment. "We are strong, and together, we can defend what we've started. No one can tear us apart if we stand united." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm hues across the park, our neighborhood formed a lively web of collaboration, enthusiasm, and cautious optimism. We were ready to fight for a safe, welcoming community, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of our battle. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed on my nightstand. I reached for it, half expecting a text from Tom or Ted. Instead, it was an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, I opened the message. "Alex isn't done with you yet." A chill ran down my spine. My heart raced as I stared at the screen. What could that mean? Before I could contemplate further, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video. I hesitated but hit play. The screen illuminated my dark room, revealing a parking lot buzzing with voices. "Does anyone know where we can find Alex?" a familiar voice said. It was Tom. The camera panned over to show a group of people gathered outside Alex's now vacant home. They were holding signs reading "No more HOA tyranny and justice for Springdale Heights." My stomach twisted. What were they doing? It felt like they were poking a hornet's nest. What if Alex's response would be more dangerous than retaliation through legal channels? I couldn't shake the fear that our victory was being overshadowed by looming threats. Could it be possible that my fight against Alex was far from over? I sat up in bed, heart racing and mind racing even faster. My resolve to unify the neighborhood would soon be tested again. The battle had only just begun. I sat up in bed, heart racing and mind racing even faster. My resolve to unify the neighborhood would soon be tested again. The battle had only just begun. Restless, I trudged through a rough night of dark thoughts. I tossed and turned, debating whether or not I should join Tom and the others outside Alex's house. What were they hoping to accomplish? Would they provoke Alex into a response that could put us all in danger? By morning, I knew I needed clarity. I couldn't allow fear to dictate my decisions. I needed to know what was truly going on. Before I could dwell too long on my anxiety, I shot a quick message to Tom. "I saw the video. Are you guys planning to confront Alex?" His reply was almost instant. "Yes, but peacefully. We just want to let him know we stand united." Relief mingled with dread. I considered the potential consequences of their protests. "Be careful, Tom. I can't shake the feeling that Alex might retaliate." But before I could respond further, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Ted. Meeting this evening at Tom's. Need your input. I agreed, buzzing with mixed emotions. I wanted to help, but part of me felt like we were stepping deeper into danger. Still, I needed to support my neighbors. After everything we had faced together, it was time for decisive action. Later that evening, I stood outside Tom's house, a quaint structure brightly lit and festooned with a wreath that was stubbornly hanging in despite the warm weather. I could hear animated voices spilling from the open door, which was a welcome melody against the backdrop of lingering unease. As I walked inside, I found the living room filled with friends and neighbors, all buzzing with a shared sense of urgency. Tom stood at the front with a whiteboard, jotting down ideas. He greeted me with a nod, drawing everyone's attention. Thanks for coming, everyone. I know we've all been uneasy since the protest, so let's discuss our strategy moving forward. His voice held an air of calm, which soothed my racing heart. We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas for how we would navigate our newfound freedom while also keeping ourselves safe. Ted's idea of community training sessions gained traction. We discussed what our legal options were regarding the fines and improper actions taken against us, actions that had already begun to feel like history. But then came a knock on the door that shifted the mood dramatically. I exchanged worried glances with Tom, who stepped cautiously to answer it. When he opened the door, we were met with an unexpected sight. Rick, the local handyman and a close friend of Alex. My stomach twisted. Despite the man's easy attitude, his loyalty to Alex was concerning. "Evening, folks," Rick greeted, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I come in peace. Just wanted to warn you all that Alex is watching. He's unhappy about the protest, and trust me, he's got his supporters." The room fell silent. My mind raced to digest what Rick had just said. "How do you know this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's just say he's still connected, and has got friends in high places. The HOA's dirty dealings won't stop just because he's out." Rick leaned closer, lowering his voice. "If you keep pushing him, things could get dicey. You don't want to incur his wrath." "Duly noted," I said, my heart pounding. "But running away from a bully isn't an option. We have rights, Rick." "That's true," Rick replied, folding his arms. "But be smart about this. A little diplomacy might go a long way. You mess with Alex, and he'll retaliate. Consider this a warning." Before he left, Rick offered one final grim remark. "You all think you've got this under control. But trust me, you have no idea who you're dealing with." With that, he turned and departed, leaving a suffocating dread in his wake. The room was heavy with silence, everyone deep in thought after his ominous warning. I stole a glance at Tom, whose expression mirrored my concern. Do we heed the warning, or do we stand firm? I pondered aloud, anxiety prickling at the back of my mind. "Firm, but smart," Tom replied, his brow furrowing. "We owe it to ourselves and our neighbors to protect what we've built. But I do think we need to be cautious moving forward." As we strategized through the rest of the night, it became increasingly clear that we needed to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. Tom suggested a community meeting specifically to address Rick's warning and gather ideas for how to brace ourselves for what could come next. By the end of the meeting, we had set a date. Underneath the shared fear of what Alex might do, a newfound resolve formed. As I returned home, the weight of the day pulled heavy on my shoulders. I was thankful for the community we were fostering, yet the specter of Alex loomed large, his next move unpredictable and dangerous. That night, sleep eluded me again. I lay awake, pondering the implications of everything that could come. My phone buzzed again around midnight, breaking the silence. I blinked at the screen. An unknown number was calling. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello. Alex wants a meeting," a gravelly voice on the other end said, coolly calculative. My heart raced as I realized the gravity of the call. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter," the voice replied, a hint of amusement laced with menace. "But hear this, you will accept the meeting. Come alone." My mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and anger thrashing within me. Why would I meet with him? What does he want? You'll find out soon enough. Just know that if you refuse, things will get complicated. Before I could respond or request any clarity, the line went dead. I sat in my dark room, heart thudding loudly in my chest. The message was clear. It was time to make a choice, and it wouldn't come without consequence. I thought of my community, of everyone who had rallied around me, and the hope we were trying to build. How could I put them at risk by confronting Alex? But how could I stand down when it felt like cowardice? With a steely determination creeping in, I decided I would meet Alex. I needed answers. I had to know what he was planning. As dawn broke, the skies cast a pale light over Springdale Heights. I prepared myself for the confrontation ahead, feeling the weight of our community's fate resting squarely on my shoulders. As dawn broke, the skies cast a pale light over Springdale Heights. I prepared myself for the confrontation ahead, feeling the weight of our community's fate resting squarely on my shoulders. With a blend of dread and determination, I dressed quickly and looked into the mirror, steeling myself against the uncertainty ahead. There was a part of me that wanted to gather Tom and Ted, rally support, but I knew this meeting had to be face-to-face, just Alex and me. I needed to navigate this confrontation carefully, lest I inadvertently spark further chaos in my community. I arrived at the vacant house that once belonged to Alex, its facade unkempt and weeds encroaching at the edges. It was almost as if the house itself still bore the remnants of his tyranny. As I approached the front door, memories flooded back. The whispers, the intimidation, and the compliance of so many who had suffered under his heavy-handed rule. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The door swung open immediately, revealing Alex's imposing figure. His expression held no warmth, just calculated arrogance as he gestured me inside with a wave of his hand. "Welcome," he said, the sarcasm dripping from his words. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Inside, the air felt thick with tension. The space had dim lighting, heavy drapes drawn against the morning sun, casting eerie shadows across the room. I had imagined it differently, perhaps more austere, but its familiarity sent a shiver down my spine. "I didn't come here to exchange pleasantries," I replied, voice steady, though my heart pounded. "Get to the point, Alex." He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're a lot braver than I expected. Coming here alone? Risky choice." He paced around, a wolf sizing up its prey. "But you see, bravery needs to be tempered with wisdom. Your little rebellion is amusing. But do you really think you can dismantle what I built?" I swallowed hard, knowing I had to find the right words. "What you built was based on manipulation and fear. We deserve better, and we will get better." "Better," he scoffed, his voice layering on sarcasm. "What you want is chaos. Your little community hasn't realized yet that you will always need someone to keep order." I was that someone. I stepped forward, refusing to let anxiety cloud my purpose. "You didn't keep order, Alex. You oppressed. You terrorized families in our neighborhood. You don't get to call that order." "Perhaps," he shrugged, unfazed by my retort. "But look around you. This community isn't as united as you think. Your little meetings, those are rife with dissent. I have ears everywhere. Most are simply lying low, waiting for the storm to pass." "Is that a threat?" I asked, eyes narrowing. He chuckled darkly. "A warning. All I ask is that you consider your next moves carefully. If you want to fight, fine. But I can assure you, I won't go down without a fight. You think you're strong now, but you're outnumbered." Before I could respond, he followed up with a different tone, a hint of something more sincere, if that was even possible. "You see, I don't merely care for power. I care for stability, even if it's edged in fear. The world outside is volatile, and I simply provide what these people don't know they need." "You're wrong," I argued, every ounce of my conviction fueling my words. "Stability built on fear isn't true stability at all. You may think you have control, but you don't. We are awake now, and we will fight back." He regarded me anew, the facade slipping just a fraction. "You're idealistic, and while I can respect the tenacity, idealism doesn't align with reality. My methods may be harsh, but they serve a purpose. As for your little rebellion, it won't hold." "Maybe it won't, but this isn't just about me. You've made enemies, Alex," so many more than you realize. I continued, my voice rising. Those who fear you are now starting to find their voices. You can't keep using intimidation to control this neighborhood. Alex paused, similarly conflicted. In that moment, I thought I saw a flicker of panic cross his features, though he masked it quickly. You're playing a risky game, my friend. I'll give you credit. Most would think twice about standing in front of me. But you want to play? Then play we shall. What do you mean by that? I pressed, sensing a shift in the room. He chuckled, a cold laugh that echoed despite the cozy interior, leaving an unsettling chill in its wake. You shall find out soon enough. Let's make it interesting. With that, he turned, eyes gleaming with an unspoken challenge. I had not anticipated this. I had hoped for resolution, but Alex's appetite for control was insatiable, and it seemed he was more devious than I had imagined. Wait! I shouted, but he waved goodbye. The door swinging closed behind him with a resolute thud. Left alone in the dim house, a wave of frustration washed over me. Instead of the clarity I had craved, I felt ensnarled in a larger web of tension and intrigue. The power struggle between us was becoming a game of chess where every move brought with it unforeseen consequences. As I stepped outside, the brightness of the day stood in stark contrast to the shadows looming inside the house. I realized that this confrontation had left me with more questions than answers. With a newfound urgency, I raced back to my neighborhood. I had to warn Tom and the others, but more importantly, I had to galvanize them into action. If Alex was upping the stakes, we would need to be ready for whatever he was planning. The sun dipped low in the sky as I raced home, my resolve hardening. We had built our community around hope, around unity. I wouldn't allow a single man to sow discord and fear among us. We stood at the ready, and it was time to strategize our next move. As I reached my front porch, I could already envision the meeting place filled with neighbors, united once more. With every ounce of hope ignited, I was determined to lead the charge against Alex's looming threat. Our victory was no longer just about reclaiming our neighborhood. It was a test of our collective strength and spirit. Whatever Alex's next move, it would find us ready to defend our community every step of the way. The fight for Springdale Heights had just escalated, and together, we would face it head-on.